Welcome and thank you for joining. We can now officially start with our today's webinar as well. So thank you again for joining us and spending an hour with us today. We will dive into the world of recruitment metrics. We will talk about how to choose the metrics and also how to use technology to make all the tracking and analyzing part more fun for you. My name is Maria. I'm one of the co-founders of RecruitLab. It's a recruitment software with built-in tools for recruitment marketing, applicant tracking, and video interviewing. I will talk more about RecruitLab at the end of the webinar, but if you are eager already to learn more about RecruitLab, you can book a demo. I will share the link with you shortly in the chat as well. Or I hope one of my team members can share the link. It seems to be seem to be some kind of issue here with my Notion file. So Marilyn or Lina, please share the link so that others could book the product tour with us. We're happy to show you more about all the different features and how RecruitLab can help you win time and make all the recruitment related activities more fun for you. But what we have on our agenda today, the webinar consists of 3 parts. At first, I will guide you through the hiring funnel and share some insights and ideas how to choose the framework for your recruitment metrics. Then Piret from Talent Hub will share her experience and also some tips and tricks on how to use the data and how to make reflection part of your process or the daily work. And as I mentioned at the end of the webinar, I will talk more about RecruitLab and give you an overview of how you can track your activities, because the key, as you know, the key to success is not only knowing about those recruitment metrics in theory, but actually using them and making them part of your daily work. And without technology, it's not fun at all. So let's get started. Of course, you can add your questions as well. There's a questions tab on the right corner, and we will take a look at those questions after Piret's presentation. So we have time to answer those. But let's get started. So I think there are several reasons or challenges why it has been difficult for recruiters to be as data-driven as they actually would like to be. And I think those are some of them. For example, how to find tools that are customizable to help you collect not just any data, but relevant data. Also, how to automate it as much as possible, because otherwise you're falling behind in competition. And while you hassle with data collection and analyzing everything, others are already improving their processes and maybe even sending out offer letters to their candidates. Also, reporting is still a challenge for recruiters, definitely. I remember when I was a recruiter, and I remember how frustrating it was for me to create reports to my hiring managers, because I didn't have the right tools, and doing this in Excel was really time consuming. Also, it's a challenge to find the most relevant recruitment metrics you and your team should use. I hope I can give you some ideas or inspiration, like how to get started and how to make your decisions. And also Piret will share her experience. And I think it is a challenge to find great habits or ways how to actually use this information you are collecting. And there's a lot to learn from Piret and Talent Hub. So if there are any challenges you are facing or challenges, it would be nice to know about them. So write to the chat what has stopped you from being more data-driven, because I assume that all of we want to be more data-driven and want to make our decisions based on data. Also, as you already have signed up for this webinar, I assume that you know how important it is to use data. But if there are still some recruiters who are not convinced, then maybe some of the reasons to consider. For example, we often hear that recruitment is more complicated than ever, or that it's difficult to find great candidates. But there are still companies, there are companies who struggle to find candidates, but there are companies who are actually doing very well. So you can build a hiring funnel that works well for you. But it's difficult to start improving the funnel or the recruitment process if the only thing you can rely on is your gut feeling. So having data will definitely help you answer the most crucial or essential questions. For example, yes, we don't have enough candidates, but why? How many candidates should we have to fill some specific role? From which channels are the most suitable coming? Is there something we can do to improve the response rate? Or what are the main offer rejection letters, reasons, etc. So to have answers to those questions, you definitely need data. There's also a poll on the right corner. Click on it, and there's a question: how difficult is measuring recruitment metrics for you right now? It would be interesting to know, again, on a scale from 1 to 5. But how to choose the metrics? I call it like passive versus active approach. There's a huge difference whether you just have an overview of the most common recruitment metrics, like number of applicants or time to hire, time to fill. This is what I call a passive approach. Or it makes it's like a whole different situation when you have an overview of your whole hiring funnel, from building awareness to the actual hires. So this is what I call active approach. So why passive is passive? If you don't collect more in-depth data, you will just have an overview of the current situation, and you actually don't have any clues like what to improve or how to improve those numbers. So it's difficult to pinpoint the bottlenecks in the hiring or in the recruitment process. And it's also difficult to see the progress if you change something. So basically, let's say your time to hire is 55 days. All you can do is just say that let's hire faster. But how? You don't have information for doing that. So the active approach, on the other hand, means that you can actually make decisions based on the data. It means that each activity and stage in your recruitment process or in the hiring funnel is linked to the next one. So you will get actionable insights looking at the data, and it's not anymore hire faster, but it's more like by improving this specific conversion rate, we will get X more candidates. So it's a lot more practical. Or if you want to have, let's say, 5 great candidates at the final stage, we need to have at least 100 candidates based on the previous data. Our recruitment campaign should reach at least 1,000 people, for example, because we know that the conversion rate from job ad visitors to applications is 10%. So you have more information you can use to decide what kind of stages or what kind of things in the recruitment process you actually have to improve. So in short, instead of only using the key metrics separately, I would recommend building a system of metrics that is actually describing your hiring funnel. And this will allow you to pinpoint the main bottlenecks. So how to get started? It doesn't mean that you have to track all those possible metrics. All know that there are thousands of options there. But what it means is that you should map your hiring funnel. And to make it easier for you, I would recommend dividing the whole hiring funnel into two funnels. And the first one, from awareness to applications. So basically everything you do to get the applications. And there's a difference whether you are running recruitment campaigns on social media or publishing job ads in different channels, or you are maybe sourcing. So Piret will talk more about this kind of projects where you focus more on sourcing and getting your applicants or candidates this way. But yeah, this is the first part of the funnel, from awareness to applications. And the second part of the funnel is from applications to hires. So basically everything you do to select the right people. So this funnel logic stems from marketing. It's called data model. And the logic behind it is that you should guide your target group, so your potential candidates, through all the stages towards the action you want them to make. In our case, in recruitment, the action is you want them to apply to your position. So to make someone apply, you have to make sure that they are aware of your company. You have to generate interest, desire, and so on. And in each stage, you should collect data about the metrics that are relevant for you, because all the companies are different, all the recruitment projects are different, and the way we do recruitment marketing or the way we acquire applications or applicants, it's totally different. So you have to find metrics that are relevant for you. And let's say if we have the problem that we have that we don't have enough applicants, then we can look back and pinpoint where's the issue or where's the drop off. Let's say we have enough job ad visitors, but the rate from visitors to applications is too low. So definitely the first message that attracts our potential candidates to the job ad is good enough, but something on the landing page or on the more thorough job ad is not working and it's not attractive enough to make them apply. So you can look back, go through the stages and decide what you should improve to get more applications. The next part of the funnel is more complicated, because you're not only guiding your candidates through these stages, but at the same time, you're also assessing them. So you have to put more focus on candidate experience as well. But again, you can pinpoint the bottlenecks. For example, if the conversion rate from applications to pre-selection stages is low, it means that your campaign is not attracting the right target group, and you don't get enough suitable candidates to move forward in your hiring funnel. Again, then it's something you have to improve, like how to maybe the recruitment arguments you're using are not correct, or maybe the description of the role is not clear enough. So you can do the changes and test whether the conversion rates will improve or not. I will not go into details here, but just to show you that it is there isn't one framework that will work for every position and every recruitment project. That's why the tools we're using should be customizable to actually support you in different projects. In our case, for example, when we were hiring for a junior customer success manager role, we had a recruitment recruitment campaign on social media. So the things we measured in this first part of funnel were totally different when we were hiring for full stack engineer, and this project was only focusing on sourcing. And also the recruitment stages were different. So the metrics or the conversion rates we were measuring were different. But we now have the information, and whenever we will start hiring again, we can use this data and plan the next hirings. Why it's important to have this kind of data and numbers, as Piret mentioned, that it's always easier to talk to your managers when you actually, you don't just have to talk or need to talk, you actually have those numbers as well. So having this kind of data and numbers will help you to be more transparent. And it's important not only in communication with your hiring managers, but also it's important for candidates. For example, we have shared this recruitment statistics with our candidates as well, and we have received really good and positive feedback from them. It's a really simple thing you can do: add numbers to your rejection emails, just to give them the overview, how many candidates you had, how many were in the, final stages, in the technical interview stage, and so on. And with hiring managers, well, it's always easy to say that talent acquisition function is not working or recruiters are not fast enough or good enough. But if you can show the numbers and actually show what you have done in order to schedule 5 interviews with really good candidates, then you can gain their respect as well. So that's the first part from me. I will let Piret do the magic and share her experience as well.
Thank you for that, Maria. I just added a comment in the chat box as well. I think it's so good and interesting to share that data with your candidates as well, especially when they're rejection candidates, because then they get an understanding of what does the process actually look like and what does it mean, and this just builds confidence. It's such a nice and important thing to do. Thank you. As heard, my name is Piret. I am from Talent Hub. And I will be doing sort of a presentation of why we use metrics in recruitment. During my presentation, I will allocate approximately 20 minutes to cover the importance of data, touch upon the process and how we use data at Talent Hub for continued learning and for improvements. And since we already saw that there's so many different data points, we won't be able to cover everything in detail. I encourage you to jot down any ideas, thoughts, questions you have either in the chat box or on your own notepad for further research. And you can also reach out to me later, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation as well. I will not be pausing between the slides for questions, because the topics we will be discussing are so interconnected and intertwined. We will be hopping between different topics, so chances are, or potentially the questions you have will be covered throughout the slides already, and obviously at the end we'll have time for discussions. And Maria is doing my slide movements, so you can move on to the next slide. So delving into reasons why recruitment data is crucial. And I love this quote from Edward Deming. While gut feeling and instincts are valuable, they can only take us this far. When it comes to learning, planning, and implementing a structured process to work efficiently, having data is essential. It provides insights into your current position, past experiences, and allows you to shape and influence your future decisions. Without data, our decisions are solely based on opinions. So at Talent Hub, we rely on data to effectively manage time, understand recruitment strategies, gauge process, identify obstacles, and install confidence in our projects. We use it to look at our overall performance and become better at what we do. So just to improve and do things better than we did before. So let's start with planning for my time. So it's super weird, like not being in control of your slides. So if I stutter a little bit between slides, please bear with me. Before initiating any project at Talent Hub, we conduct something called the market volume search. So this involves leveraging the information we have regarding required skills, restrictions such as location, experience level, and industries to gain an overall understanding of the market size. Next slide. By determining whether a role falls within a niche limited talent pool, or if there is an abundance of available talent, we can tailor our recruitment approach accordingly. But you also need to have insights to the behavior of your target group. So for example, here is a market volume search for a senior full stack engineer. You can see up there the basic search that gives me an idea of how big the overall market is for the skill set within the location restrictions. The below table is data from a few months before where we filled a very similar position. I can see from that that to secure 2 hires, we needed a talent pool of around 240 people. So to be safe, let's assume 150 individuals are required for 1 hire. Additionally, the data reveals that engineers are less responsive to outreach, and that's not going to be a surprise to anybody who's done any recruitment in the last decade, I think. But we have done fairly well here with 43% response rate, but again, you can see only 20 of those converted to interviews. So the data tells me that to achieve 10 screenings, I need to reach out to the entire talent pool. I now know that I'm likely to need 2 weeks to source and qualify my talent pool. So that's where my initial effort is going to go to. Other insights I can gather from here is our partner trusts us, and we have done a pretty good job with identifying the right profiles as a submission to first interview is 100% conversion, and 56% of those submitted went to final interview. What you cannot see from that table is that actually there were 2 technical stages in that process before the final interview as well. So the end conversion rate tells me that this was a successful project. So it's a good project to use to set my project goals. When you select data to compare, you need to be critical of the source as well. And I highly recommend in recruitment that you use recent data. So cumulative data over time gives you trends, but snapshots gives you insight to what is happening right now. Yes. So looking back at again on those conversion rates from reach out to screenings, here's a current data set for a co-founder position that I'm currently working on. So here, this role demands a more niche skill set, as we're looking for someone who has founder experience in a very specific sector, but also the people I'm looking for have a background in public speaking, networking, and business development. So these people are often interested in building their networks. And initial keyword search gave us a talent pool of 91 people in the European sort of time zones. That was one of our restrictions. From there, we identified 57 profiles that matched our understanding of what we need. Now, the talent pool I'm working with here is a lot smaller, but that's okay, as most of the individuals I'm going to reach out to will be eager to engage and convert to a screen. As you can see here, I have only contacted 47% of my sourced list, and that represents then the A-list candidates. And 78% of them came to talk. Another interesting thing you see here is the conversion in the screen to submission. It's super low compared to the 45% we had on the engineering role. For me, this again reaffirms that the most of the profiles we contact will come to talk, even if it's just to network. And the fact that I have only submitted 21% of the screenings, again, reaffirms this understanding. The conversion rate from submission to interview and second interview tells me we are finding the right people and we're on track with the project. So having lower numbers in the sourcing and talent pool or having lower numbers to submissions is not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to look at the whole picture to understand what is happening in your projects. What that data tells me is I will have less profiles to qualify and source, but I will spend a lot more time on screening calls, which means that this type of project, I need to keep my diary free, and I'm going to be spending like a huge bulk of my time in actual screening calls as well. Next slide, please. Understanding these nuances enables me to work smarter and not harder. Project managers and salespeople are more willing to engage with recruiters compared to technical specialists. LinkedIn data shows that there are 54 VP of engineering profiles in Estonia and over 17,000 project managers. With this insight, when building a source talent pool for a project management role, it makes sense to me to be more selective in the beginning and only reach out to my top tier candidates. On the other hand, when I seek for a VP of engineering, I will most likely reach out to all 54 of them, take them out to lunch and see if they can recommend somebody from their network if they themselves are not interested in the position or not suited for the role. So again, this data and insight tells me where do I need to put my effort first and what are my potential blockers as well. I will also look at what has worked well for my team in the past. You can put the next slide. So it's not just numbers I need to build my strategy on, but I also need to understand the contents of things. So what has worked well for myself in the past, what has worked well for my team in the past, and what has worked for other people in the past as well. And so again, next slide. Most of us use some form of LinkedIn services for recruitment. LinkedIn has loads of different reporting and metrics you can pull, but one of my favorite ones is looking at template performances. I am quite a lazy recruiter and I don't like to waste time. So I use data I have to work smart, and I try and learn from other people's successes and mistakes as well. So for example, if I need to find a site reliability engineer, and I notice that Elise and Ave have had high response rates, I would examine that reach out to understand what has worked well for them. A good response rate on its own is not a goal. What you're looking for is a good conversion rate to screens and submissions, but understanding the beginning and getting those responses is a good start. I can also use this data at the end of the projects. I can pull sort of data from LinkedIn at the end of the projects to compare my performance with others and see what I can learn. What can I do differently sort of throughout different stages and projects? So for example, if somebody has a very low sent email account, but they have really high responses or really high conversion rates, then it might be good for me to talk to them about their sourcing technique. How do they plan out their projects? What do they do differently than I do that might also work for myself? So openly sharing and discussing your data insights is an incredibly good way to learn. So I really encourage everybody to do that in your teams. If you do not have teams, find your community, find partners and buddies to sort of mentor each other and just compare things, learn from each other all the time. And if you do not have data and you have just started in recruitment or you're not yet collected any data, you can always turn to the internet as well. For templates, look for the best way to use Google search for best way to reach out to site reliability engineers on Reddit, or the most effective approaches to connect with QA professionals on Hacker News. So use these a little bit more specific searches to understand what is working well for other people and what do engineers or the specialists themselves have said that they want from their reach outs. And remember, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when valuable resources are readily available. And for recruiters, don't forget your own network. LinkedIn, Facebook, Slack, etc. There's so many recruitment community groups you can ask for support from. And I think recruiters are super nice people. And they're usually quite eager to share their experiences and learnings as well. Right. Next slide, please. I forgot to look at the time when I started speaking. So Maria, you have to flag me down if I start to use up all of the time.
Everything is good. You can continue.
Awesome. So I have my data and I have my insights. So how do I use it to stay on track? You plan ahead and update your data. So here's an example of how to project your pipeline and keep yourself accountable. You know when you need your role closed. So this is one of the first things you know. You know when your partner or manager wants the person to start. Usually it's like 2 months before you even were approached with the project idea, but you've got an idea when you want the person to start. So you can calculate backwards, when do you want to have your best candidate submitted? You probably know, or my experience tells me, that each stage of the process is likely to take up to 2 weeks. So calculating backwards. But again, if you have got that data experience from before, then you can sort of adapt your sourcing and screening times and things like that. But roughly, it's about 2 weeks for each stage of the project. And so you calculate backwards. When do you need to start doing your interviews? When do you have to have all of your reach outs pushed out? And yeah, just backwards. You also need to remember your target market behaviors that we mentioned before. If you are after those VPs, you're probably going to spend more time on calls and networking, whilst with engineers, you are likely to have to send 3 to 4 reach outs before you get a response, so your first screens may not even start before the end of week 2. So by updating that data and checking your goal versus your reality, you're able to adjust to what you're doing and where you're going with things. Again, if you don't have data to refer to when making these plans, it is even more important that you track your progress. A rule of thumb for me is for any project, 3 qualified candidates in interview with the hiring manager is good. And I want these 3 in interview within 3 weeks of the project kickoff. So that's a rule of thumb for me that I go by if I haven't had experience in recruiting for a specific position before. So that's my first goal. Then I'm going to assume that I'm likely to need at least 100 candidates in my talent pool. So that again is sort of based on experience and gut feeling and knowledge that roughly 100 people is going to be a good start. And what I do then is I select my 50 top candidates and send my reach out to them as soon as possible. So I can start getting feedback and insights to response rate and conversion rates to screenings as well. If it's really high, I know I can relax on the sourcing side for a moment and get to screens ASAP. And again, from screenings, I understand if my profiles are hitting the mark. And if it's really low, I know that I need to increase my talent pool and put more effort into my reach outs and know that this part of the project is going to take me a little bit longer. So even if you don't have data, still set those targets and goals for yourself and start comparing week by week on how you're progressing and what insights are you gathering. And using this method allows you to plan for your time week by week and know where you need to put your effort in. You can move to the next slide. So here's a slightly different view of planning your time. There is less detail, obviously. It's more of an overview, and it gives you sort of an overview of all of your projects that you're working on. I have made the top one up a little bit because I didn't have a good example to copy paste that would have been so clean and tidy. Things in real life are not that clean and tidy. So don't worry about it if you start sort of doing these type of tables and things and they look a little bit messier than they do here. So this type of overview helps you plan for your gap and you know when you can take on a new project. If you work in a bigger team, in-house or agency, this type of scheduling allows you to plan better as a team as well. You can also keep an eye on to make sure you don't overload yourself. Screenings take so much more time than any other step in the recruitment process, at least they do for me. So you don't want to have like 4 or 5 screenings, roles in screening stage of the process on the same week or consecutive weeks. And also, especially if they're like really high volume as well, you want to make sure that you've got time to do your sourcing as well as your reach out, as well as your screenings. So it helps you plan for your time and like manage expectations from your manager or from your recruitment partners as well. And another reason for tracking your progress is partner control. So hiring managers, particularly those in C-level or senior positions, often prioritize numbers. They speak in numbers. So without data, you're just another person with an opinion and they've got no reason to trust what you're saying. So first you need to understand your manager's perspective, their recruitment experience and expectations as well. So some managers, especially if they come from a more like a corporate environment, they might have an expectation that at one point they're magically going to have a selection of 10 top qualified candidates and meet them all personally at the time that is sort of convenient for them. And whilst this might work for some roles, in some companies, we already know that this will not work for most headhunted roles. And this is where you take this data and take control of the conversation and lead the project. You can combine data from similar projects with your plan and articulate specific goals of each week of your project. So by keeping the manager well informed with your progress, you're instilling this confidence in your project. And you're also able to help your managers plan their calendars. So you can tell them that in 2 weeks' time, you're most likely going to have your first interviews and you can sort of plan those assessments and plan their time as well. One of the biggest challenges we have in recruitment is like we've got amazing candidates, but we don't have anybody to meet them. So using this type of approach, again, you can manage that process and make sure that things don't stall in the long run. And you sell the iceberg. You use your conversion rates to tell a story. Most people who are not recruiters do not understand what goes into recruitment. You don't get 20 engineers into screening after sending 20 reach outs. You most likely need to send 120 reach out, 101st follow-ups, 82nd follow-ups, 43rd follow-ups. You may also need to send connection requests or get the manager themselves to send that final last of Hail Mary, please come and talk to us type of a reach out. So by using these conversion rates, you lead the conversation, you are the expert, and you know what you're doing, you have the data to back it up as well. Yes, so next slide, please. Cool. So we need to keep in mind that things don't always go according to plan. I spoke earlier about looking at templates to see what works well, but this is just the first step. So receiving a no to your reach out is better than being ghosted, but a no doesn't guarantee an interview or fill the role for you. So in the past, we have tracked the reasons why candidates have not progressed in screenings. In the slide you have in front of you, it's data from a project we had with our partner who had an exceptionally complex platform. They were quite unknown in Estonia. They had very, very high expectations from the technical staff. And the projects weren't closing. So when the progress stalled for us, we turned to data to understand our challenges. And we started recording then the reasons why people aren't interested in progressing. And we discovered that although our reach out messages were engaging and generated responses, only 24% of those responses converted to screenings. And that's pretty low. We also saw that our conversion rates from screens to submissions was low, and that's our bad. That means that the people that we're getting into screens are either not interested in the company, so we have misrepresented the opportunity, or we have selected the profiles poorly, basically. The data drove us to ask the right questions. Are we understanding the market right? Have we understood the profiles we're looking for and understood the role? Are we and the partner on the same page with what we're actually looking for? So quite often there's a miscommunication between the recruiters and the hiring managers, and also if the project has been open for a long time, things in companies change all the time, their priorities change all the time. So we took the data and we worked through all of those questions with our partners, and we changed quite a few things that we were doing. And we also managed our partners' expectations at the same time about the available talent pool for them, and also the timelines, when to expect things to convert. So I think what I want to say with this is understanding why your difficult roles are difficult gives you unrivaled insights to the market and allows you to be the best recruitment partner. Nobody wants to go to an update call and not have any updates to give. It's like, oh, but we don't have anybody to submit this week. But having this data allows you to have a conversation and work in true partnership, look for solutions that will take you both forward, because at the end of the day, you as a recruiter and your partner as a hiring manager, you both want the same end goal. You want the best candidate in that role as soon as possible. So we can move over to the next slide. And we're pretty much done with talking about sort of collecting the data and that side of things. So I'm going to focus a little bit more now on reflection. So how do we use data on regular basis, or reflections on regular basis at Talent Hub to improve how we work and what we do? In our teams, we use the STAR method for pretty much everything. Anybody who has ever had a conversation with me about recruitment knows that I'm a huge fan of the STAR method. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And it's a really quick and easy way to do reflections. So today I will be highlighting the results and learnings on the next slide, but I do want to encourage you to go work through the situation and sort of the task and the action side as well of the project to understand the why behind every step you have made and the why behind the data as well. But we can move to the next slide, please. So what we do at Talent Hub is we do a retro at the end of every project. We look at our data and key milestones. And in this example here, you can see that on top of the usual conversion rates that I've got there, we also pulled out other insights from the projects. So, for example, halfway through the project, we submitted backup candidates. And that was because whilst the other submissions were good, only one had really wowed our partner and progressed to the next stage. The other people were on hold. So we felt, okay, we probably are going to need backup candidates there because one candidate blew everybody else out of the water, basically. We also tracked how long our candidates stayed in the process, and that's really around candidate experience. And we also looked at how many sort of referral candidates we had and how quickly did we submit our headhunting candidates. And it is always important to explore the why behind every action and what we did. And when you look at data, don't just like conversion rates are super important. Look at conversion rates, look at the numbers, but also try and talk through the why. And I encourage people to also talk about the emotions, like how did you feel in certain situations, like when we had a challenge or blocker, what worked well for us to get past it, so we weren't focused on the emotional state of, oh, this is rubbish, this didn't work, but actually how did we move forward and what worked for us. So we can move forward to the next slide, and once we've looked at the results, we also pull out all of the learnings, and based on the data, we sort of summarize and we celebrate and carry forward the awesome things. And at the same time, we are completely ruthless with looking back at what we could have done better. Often we talk about data and we think about the numbers, things you can easily measure. But as recruiters, we need to understand the human behind the numbers as well. So in this particular project, we had 100% positive feedback from all of the candidates, even the backup candidates that whose interviews we had to cancel on last minute as the role was quite unexpectedly filled. And the feedback we had from them is that they were still happy with everything because we were fast, we were friendly, we were honest, and supported them through every step of the way. So referring back to Maria sort of mentioned that what I loved about sharing those numbers with your candidates, the rejected candidates as well, they understand that it wasn't like somebody's cosmic gut feeling that lost them the opportunity, that there's actually like reasons why the company made decisions that they made. So that's super important. We knew that we did really well in our communications, and the feedback from our partners was good about our communications. They were happy, but we ourselves know what happened in the background, and we could have done so much better ourselves as a team, as an organization. So that brings back to the emotion side. It's like, okay, we had good feedback from the partner, we did well, and the partner is happy, but we know that behind the scenes, actually things could have been so much easier for us if we had changed a couple of things. What else? We learned valuable lessons from the screening process as well, and understood more interview coaching is required when we attract talent from maybe more hierarchical business culture to a more Scandinavian business culture. So that was super interesting for me. I had never sort of recruited on the Lithuanian market before. And there was like a mismatch of what the candidate expected from an interview and what the hiring manager expected from an interview. So that's a lesson learned that we're going to focus on more going forward. And we share all of these learnings with our team, and we look at how we can implement improvements to our process. From this one case study, we already have made 3 tiny little adjustments in what we do in our approach with sort of similar type of projects or in general. And all of our case studies are saved in one place. Everyone has access to them. All of the new starters are encouraged to go and work through those during the first couple of weeks as well. And what works really well for us as a team is something that is sometimes quite hard to achieve, is a psychological safety around learnings. We don't hide any detail when we reflect and share our learnings, because if we did, and if we weren't completely honest with the things that went wrong or could have gone better, our data would no longer be reliable. So this psychological safety is super important, and it's about learning and sharing, and it's difficult to achieve, but I encourage everybody to work towards it. So we can move to the next slide. How are we doing for time, Maria?
We are out of time, but maybe you can share the last thought.
You can press one more time on the slide. So we don't just look at one sort of specific project retros. We look at everything that we do as an organization on various different data points. So this allows us to keep an eye on the market trends and provide insights to our partners. But we also look at team performance, and we try and find the story behind it. So here's sort of a list of different things you can look at, but just as a neat insight that we recently looked at from last quarter was that we noticed our time to hire last quarter was longer than it was overall average over the process of all of last year. So things you can sort of pull, looked at the data and last quarter, time to hire was longer than last year. And we also noticed we're doing a lot more joint projects. So often we have a sourcer and a recruiter working together. And you can take different hypotheses from that. Like, is it because in joint projects you have joint accountability, so nobody's accountable for closing the project? Or actually, is it because the roles are more niche and you do need 2 people working on it? That is completely natural. It takes longer for projects to close. Or from retros, from these sort of conversations, we know that feedback from hiring managers and candidates tells us that the economic instability and the lack of funds from companies means that people are taking more time to make decisions on both sides. So what I want to say is that as a team, we cannot just look at one data point and draw conclusions. We have to understand everything else around it and see what may have impacted what at what stage. Last slide. So there's a bunch of metrics. I mean, the ones that Maria had, there was far more in there. I was trying to be kind to you and then not include everything in that. But for me, the key thing is that without data, you just have opinions. But it's not practical to spend the time collecting every single data point to work on everything in one go. So figure out what your goal is, where do you want to get to, and then trace back what data do you need to understand the movements in that. Be specific, be realistic, and find ways to measure the impact on what you're doing. We often focus on the results, but it also matters how do you get there and what value and impact do you want to add on the way. So that concludes my presentation. I think there's a thank you slide, the last one.
Voila.
Voila. Thank you so much. Sorry, I don't know how long it took.
No problem. Thank you. I love how you compared using data with storytelling, and I truly believe in this also. Maybe you can, we have like a couple of seconds, maybe you can give us some, as you mentioned, the reach outs a couple of times, and this is the start of every successful sourcing project, so to say. How could we improve reach outs? Do you have some tricks, or what kind of information are you usually using in those first messages that you are sending out to your potential candidates?
There isn't one answer. I can tell you what I try and do. So first of all, it's trying to understand what does the target profile require. So what engineers want from a reach out is completely different to what a marketing person will want from a reach out. So I think most important thing for me is I cannot go and sell something I do not believe in. So I need to genuinely understand the company, what they're trying to achieve, so I can get my wow. Why would I want to work in that company? And I try and sort of market that then to my potential targets. Engineers or specialists, people who get a lot of information all of the time, they want probably bullet points and facts and okay, is this going to be worth my time? They don't want the fluffy, silly stuff around it usually. Whilst maybe a communication lead is going to be more about, okay, what do they value? What do they sort of strive for? So I do try and look at profiles before I send my reach outs, and I probably got 2 or 3 or 4 different templates that I can adjust depending on who my target is. I cannot write 120 unique reach outs to every single person. It's not conceivable. But what I can do is I can find my language and sort of be authentic about what I'm trying to sell. Maybe does that answer?
Yeah, really good. Well, always you have to keep your target group in mind. And I think recruiters, as you mentioned, recruiters are really lovely people. So ask for help or insights from recruiters from other industries as well to get more information about different target groups. I think this always helps.
Yeah, I mean, what I mentioned there about Googling best reach outs to engineers on Reddit, for example, you actually have engineers who have, there will be a comment thread where people have commented on the best and the worst reach out they have received as an engineer. So take a little bit of time and do that type of search. And I'm sorry to say, but I use ChatGPT now as well. If my brain is fogged and I don't know what to do, I just throw all of my keywords and stuff in there to get a first draft. And then I go and start making it my own, what feels right or not. But use every automation tool to make your life a little bit easier, and don't think that it has to be you who writes every single word. use other people's ideas, like that's absolutely fine, I think.
Yeah, copy with pride.
Copy with pride, yeah.
But thank you, Piret, once again. It was really practical and interesting to hear more details, like how you and your team are working at using data in recruitment. So as promised, I will give you an overview of Recruit Lab as well, and how you could use Recruit Lab to make your life easier and also track all the important metrics and use the data. So Recruit Lab, as I mentioned, is a recruitment software with built-in tools for applicant tracking, recruitment marketing, and also video interviewing. It's made by recruiters for recruiters. So why we started with Recruit Lab, it was the reason that we were looking for a great solution for our team a couple of years ago, and we didn't find a suitable one. So that's why we decided to create our own. And now more than 120 companies are using our product in 6 different countries. And it's our mission to make recruiters happy. So one strength we have is that our product is really customizable. So the first view you see here on the screen is the dashboard view. So you can have an overview of all of your recruitment projects, all the main metrics, and you can use the filters, what we have added, like status or users, or you can add your own custom filters. Some companies are using, I don't know, countries or type of project or something else. So you can customize the project view. And what we have recently added is the recruitment performance functionality. So coming back to this hiring funnel model, so in Recruit Lab, you can now automatically see your hiring funnel, and also the key or the main graphs. I mean, a number of finished projects and time to hire, and also sources of your candidates, sources of your hires, message conversion rates, etc. And we will soon add also benchmarking. So you see the industry benchmarks, and you can see basically how you're doing compared to other recruiters who are hiring for similar positions. And also we will soon add the candidate rejection reasons, and also candidate dropout reasons. So you will have all the information in one place, basically. Coming back to this hiring funnel model, then with Recruit Lab, you can cover both parts of those funnels. You can create career pages and recruitment landing pages, run social media campaigns. So all the activities to get the applications. And also we cover the second part of the funnel, from applications to hires. So you can easily track the conversion rates between stages and all the statistics related to your project. I will show you one example. Again, coming back to this junior customer success manager role, we were looking for our team. So you can start by creating this kind of recruitment landing page with Recruit Lab. So it's a really easy to use tool. You can just choose what kind of sections you would like to use. You can upload your own photos, add your text, videos, countdown, whatever you want to use. There are different content blocks you can choose from. And also you can add an application form. You can see the whole job ad on the link I just shared to the chat. So this is how you can collect candidates. Of course, Recruit Lab, you can integrate Recruit Lab with different job boards and other recruitment tools you're using. How you will see the information in the product. So you will get all the information about your applications or the sources where your applications are coming. So here you see how many impressions we got from Facebook, Instagram, or other channels from our own career page, for example, and how many candidates we actually got from those channels, and what's the conversion rate. Again, something you can, well, this is the information you can use to plan your future projects and also plan the budget you're going to use for your future campaigns or hiring projects. Then on the dashboard view, you can select and take a look at the project there as well. You see that it took us 30 days to fill this role, and the candidate net promoter score was 100. So we managed to keep our candidates happy during those 30 days. And if you click on this project name, then the project view will open up. Unfortunately, I can't show you the real project view because of the candidate data, but here's one demo project I have created for Recruiter. So this is how the project view in Recruit Lab looks like. You can add your own stages. So the project view is customizable. You can easily change the names on the stages, add as many stages as you want. You can rearrange or reorganize the stages, and also add automatic stage actions to the stages you want to add them. We currently have 5 different stage automatic stage actions. You can send out emails, video messages. You can automatically move candidates to next stages. You can send out video questions, and also you can set up reminders to your hiring managers or team members you are working on this project with. And again, recently we added project statistics. So by clicking on this, you will see all the conversion rates. So you don't have to do anything manually. Recruit Lab does everything for you. So you see the number of submissions or candidates. We had 96 candidates. 40 of them I invited to participate in asynchronous video interview. This is one of the built-in video tools we have in Recruit Lab. So you can send out your video questions to as many candidates you want at the same time, and then candidates will record their answers and send the video answers back to you. So I sent the invitation to 40 candidates. 30 of them sent their recordings back, 75%, which is really good. And based on the video recordings, I invited 15 candidates to a video call, like a short intro call with me. We had 5 interviews, like in-person interviews in the office, and we hired 1 candidate. So coming back to my first part of the presentation, so this is the hiring funnel, or one way how to use the statistics and how to see the statistics in Recruit Lab. Also, with Recruit Lab, you can easily ask for feedback from your candidates. You can just send out the rejection letter with like a 1-question survey. How likely would you recommend applying to us? And you will see all the responses in Recruit Lab. And Recruit Lab then automatically generates the candidate net promoter score for you as well. Again, I can't show you the real comments and answers because there are candidate names linked to those. But here's a demo screenshot, a comment from my colleague Simas. But again, just to show you that everything you do in Recruit Lab, whether you send out feedback emails or you send out video questions or video interviews, you will get back this information like the conversion rate or the response rate, just to give you the information or the know-how, like, are you doing well? Is the response rate good enough or not? and you can pinpoint and improve the email, for example, in order to improve the response rate in the future. So yeah, this is in short how you can manage your hiring funnel with the help of Recruitlab. This was just 1/3 of the functionality. So if you would like to learn more, feel free to book the product tour. My colleagues shared the link earlier in the chat. And one extra thing, using data in recruitment, you can also use data in the assessment process as well. We recently added candidate scorecards. So one of our customers said it was really nice way how to describe those scorecards, that using them is like converting your emotions into comparable numbers. So it makes candidate assessment more transparent and easier. So you can invite your hiring managers to Recruitlab to assess the candidates based on the interview, for example, and give scores based on the main criteria you want to assess. So yeah, this is it from my side. Good comment from Piret that when adding scorecards, make sure you know what each number means. We have a couple of questions still here. Piret, maybe for you, what is the best time to recruit during the year? If we can answer this.
How long is a piece of string? There isn't like the best or worst time. I suppose calendar availability is connected to things. So usually between Christmas and New Year or during the summer holidays, things take a little bit longer. But in reality, the best time to start recruiting is a couple of months before you need the person in place. So don't be held back by, oh no, but it's almost November. Let's start in January. If you need the person to be operating in January, start thinking about your recruitment in sort of October time, basically. Give yourself time for everything.
Yeah, and we have another question here about Recruitlab. Like, how long do you need to use Recruitlab until this data begins to show? So basically, it will start showing you the data from day one if you have like projects that you are actively working on. And you can setting up your account is really easy. We have our special customer success managers here to help you. So the onboarding process will be really smooth. But as we don't have any other questions at the moment, then thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Piret, for sharing your ideas and experience. Keep an eye on our LinkedIn page, because we will soon publish the information about our next webinar and next guest speakers. And yeah, hope to see you next time and enjoy your day.
Thank you, everybody.